Okay, so after a week of leaks, Gemini 3 is finally here, and it was definitely worth the wait. I have been having a blast with this model for the last week or so, and it's the most intelligent Gemini model yet. Its multimodal reasoning capabilities are simply next level. Google really cooked with this one, especially when it comes to UIs. Their focus has been on the agentic capabilities, which actually show up in the testing that I have done. It's a really, really great model for planning, taking actions, and verifying. But there is also a pretty neat surprise that they just dropped. With Gemini 3 Pro, they are also releasing Google Antigravity, which is their new agentic coding IDE. You can think of this as your junior developer. Apart from this, there are a number of different applications that are going to be using Gemini-powered agents. One of them is the Gemini agent that is going to be available in the Gemini app. It can take actions on your behalf. For example, finally, we have an agent that can filter out your Gmail account and take actions right in your calendar, which is actually built by Google. So we have a lot to cover in this video, including some of my own testing. But first, some benchmarks. Now, in the early access phase, these are the only two benchmarks that I have access to. I have been testing this model for more than a week, so have a pretty good understanding of what the actual capabilities are. The benchmark that we are looking at is the LM Arena. And this model, just like Gemini 2.5 Pro, is top of the leaderboard with a new 1501 score, which is pretty crazy. And then there is Web Dev Arena, where again, it's scoring 1487 and it's the top ranked model. One thing you are going to notice about this model is that it's really good at UI generations. We're going to look at some of the details later in the video, but before that, I want to show you the multimodal reasoning capabilities of this model. So this is an app that is available on AI Studio. I will put a link to this. Now in here, you can just upload an image, and by looking at the contents of the image, it generates working web apps for you. So for example, here is a pretty neat one. If you click on this, it puts the cassettes in the cassette recorder, or player in this case, and then you can play things. Okay, you can eject things, which is pretty awesome. And I think it's going to be extremely helpful for learning. So for example, here I just uploaded an image of a black hole, and then it came up with this. Now, the neat thing is that it actually simulates the gravity warps around black holes. If I am sending an object, you can actually see that depending on how close the orbit of the object is to black hole, it has very different behavior. So this can really supercharge learnings for people. Now here's another fun one. I uploaded my YouTube logo and it created this. Okay, so now let me show you some of the tests that I have done over the last week or so with this model. But before that, I want to talk about Google Antigravity, which is really a new way of software development. There's going to be a separate video on it, but with this, Google is thinking about this not as a coding assistant, but really as a junior developer. You can plan tasks with it, assign it, it will test those with its own browser, and then you can review or leave comments on those tasks. So it's a very different coding experience. And it does things very differently compared to some of the other solutions that we have seen out there. There's going to be a dedicated video later, so do watch that. But here's some of my testing of Gemini 3. Let me show you a few examples. Create a login page featuring a physics-based 3D flower character that tracks the mouse cursor. So here's what you get. It's really, really neat. And all of this animation is created from a single static image. But the main strength of this model is web design. So here's a prompt: create a landing page for my voice to text app. And this is the first time that a model created something that does not look like a template. And more impressively, it did this in single shot. Now this next one is something that I haven't seen even a single model achieve so far. Create an animation of a crowd of people walking to form Hello World as the camera angle changes to bird's view. So here's the output. In this case, the model has temporal consistency. And I haven't seen even a single model create this consistently, but the new Gemini 3 model is able to do it without any issues, which is pretty impressive. And it's really great at creating SVGs, an animation of pedestal fan as SVG. So it created this even with controls that you can speed up and speed down. It can create Minecraft, which is fully playable. Now most of these are just toy prompts, but the real beauty is you can create personal softwares with it. I'm creating a fully local video editor that has all the features that you would expect. The model is currently available as Gemini 3 Pro Preview. Again, this is not the stable version, it's a preview version. So we're going to talk about some of the features and capabilities, and then I'm going to show you some of the outputs from this model, which makes it extremely impressive. So we have the default temperature setting. You can provide multimodal inputs. I've tested with images, it works. And then you can define the resolution, which basically controls the number of tokens that are going into the model. It also has the normal capabilities except function calling. That tool is not currently available, at least during the early access, but you can ground everything in Google search, along with you can provide URL as a context, which is pretty awesome. The output length is 65,000 tokens. The total context window seems to be around 1 million token. You can also set the thinking level. Right now, the only two options that I see are low and high. Let's run a few tests. You'll probably see Gemini 3 listed here. Since I am in early access, so I don't see that listed here, but it's in the settings. Create a Rubik Cube solver. The user should be able to initialize Rubik cubes of different sizes and then use the solver to solve them from a random position, which the user can shuffle. Okay, I am happy with the transcription. Usually I have noticed that this new Gemini 3 Pro is a lot faster compared to the previous 2.5 Pro. And it generates a lot less text or tokens compared to its predecessor. Now, the chain of thought is highly structured, very similar to what the Gemini 2.5 Pro was able to do. So in this case, it's thinking about the core goal. It says, I am now fully immersed in understanding users' core request, self-contained HTML Rubik Cube solver. I am actively considering the necessary features, particularly supporting diverse cube sizes and initialization. First, it tries to understand what the user is asking. Then it comes up with a plan on how to achieve that. And then it starts thinking about the implementation. Okay, so here is the code. Now, if you're new to AI Studio, they added this neat preview feature. So if you click on this, you'll be able to see a preview of what exactly it created. So let's shuffle this. Right now we're using 3x3 and we can solve it. Now keep in mind, it's not magic. There's an algorithm for solving Rubik cubes, which any decently intelligent LLM should be able to do. But this does a lot more than simple solving Rubik cubes. And I'm going to show you some very interesting examples. So one of them is this animation. Create an animation of a crowd of people walking to form Hello World, I'm Gemini, as camera changes to bird's eye view. I usually ask it to use 3.js and everything should be in a single HTML file. On this side, I have the Gemini 2.5 Pro. I wanted to compare the outputs from both these models. Now, Gemini 2.5 Pro created about 6,000 tokens. On the other hand, the new Gemini 3 Pro created only about 3,500 tokens. But let me show you a preview of what Gemini 2.5 Pro created. Now, in this case, it basically created the surface and there is nothing on it. So here's the actual file. This was state of the art back in March 2025. In comparison, here is what you get from Gemini 3 Pro, you can see that these characters are walking randomly in different directions. And if we switch to top view, you're going to get a better sense of what exactly is happening, right? So all of them are walking, and now they are forming the words that we asked the model to do, which is really impressive. Okay, so one of the core strengths of this model is graphical user interfaces. And for the first time, it feels like it can generate UIs that do not feel like created by an AI. So I tried to create a website for my own voice to text system that you can run completely locally. And it did a really, really nice job with it. However, I want to make sure that the expectations are correct. So here's the prompt that I am using. For very simple prompts, you probably are not going to get as much details. Now, the beauty is that you can use this for brainstorming as well. So for example, in this case, I provided the web link and then I asked it to iterate on different web designs. So here is the website that it created based on the contents of my website. You can actually see that it's able to not only access the information, but it's able to utilize it pretty effectively. Now, when it comes to web design, I wanted to see how further we can push it. So here's a tweet from Alex K. I saw this. There is no AI that can do this yet. Right? It's a pretty neat animation. Okay, so here I provided the same image along with the expected behavior and definition of the scene. So it spent some time thinking about what exactly to implement. And here's our first implementation. So I can actually show you this. Now, I didn't ask it to implement that animation which actually covers the whole screen, but the general behavior is there. And in the next iteration, I just asked it to also move the other elements, and it does a really, really good job at it. So generally, it's a pretty impressive model. However, there are some very interesting failure cases as well. Now, the first one is that it fails the clock test. So I provided an analog clock. You can see here, it's almost 1:50. And I just asked it, what is the current time on this clock? Now, the chain of thought is interesting. So it says, I have been examining the image to ascertain the time displayed. I have pinpointed the hour hand position between 10 and 11, slightly past 10. Now, I think it confuses the minute hand with the hour hand, and that's where it gets confused. Now, at the end, it says the hour hand, shorter black hand, is positioned towards 10, and the minute hand, which is positioned directly at 2, which represents the 10-minute mark. So the only mistake that it made was that it switched these two hands, and that's why it got confused. Other than that, it's genuinely impressive. But for me, the most fun and useful part was what I'm calling the development of personal software. So I've been trying to build a text-based video editor for quite some time. And I have tried multiple different agentic tools for it, but none of them have come closer to what this new Gemini 3.0 is able to do. So far, we have mostly looked at single shot prompts where the model does a really, really good job. However, to be honest, most of these foundation models have seen these prompts in one shape or form. But the real test is, can it build complex software? And that's exactly what I was trying to achieve here. Now I'm going to disable sound, but you can see it basically tracks the words while the person is speaking. But here's the best part. You can highlight a text section. Let's say we're going to add a caption. And now if we start playing it, you're going to see the captions appearing. You can also include zoom in and zoom out. So for example, we're going to just randomly add some zoom here, and you'll be able to see that the app does that. It's also a text-based video editor. So you can just select text, delete it. Those segments are gone from the video. It also has the ability to remove filler words. So just click on that. You can delete everything just by selecting a segment and then deleting that segment. Now it's a fully functional app. So I'll probably create a more detailed video on how I did that. Now, based on my actual development experience, I can say that this model is very close, or maybe surpasses Sonnet 4.5. So Google has really cooked with this model. By the way, if you are interested in this project or my local and private voice to text transcription system, check out the details in the video description. Since this is a reasoning model, I tested it on my misguided attention questions. Now, this is the modified version of the trolley problem with 5 dead people. So here, it actually correctly identified that those people are already dead. So in a chain of thought, it's thinking about its choices. So it says the choice is stark: hitting corpses versus killing a living person. The core ethical conflict now is clear, right? And it decides not to pull the lever at all. So this is pretty smart. It says, no, I should not pull the lever. In this scenario, the 5 people on the main track are already dead. Allowing the trolley to hit them results in no loss of life. However, it still struggles with this one. So this is river crossing. In this case, we only want to transfer the goat to the other side of the river. Now it says, I'm currently fleshing out the core logic. Specifically, I'm focusing on how to represent the state of each item, right? And then my initial idea is to use a simple binary representation where each item on the left is going to be represented with 1, on the right back that is going to 0 and 1 basically, right? And then it starts to think about the riddle. Now, again, it suffers from misguided attention in this case because it tries to solve the original unmodified version of the river crossing problem rather than what we have provided here. Okay, so in here it says it seems crucial to ensure the goat's safety, which will guide the whole process. I am carefully analyzing each move, ensuring it does not violate the core constraint. Okay, so this is good. At least it identified that goat is the core goal here. Now, one thing that I don't really like about the chain of thought here is it basically gives you what it's doing, not exactly what it's thinking about. So to be honest, you don't really get much information out of it. But here at the end, it says to get everyone across safely, the farmer must follow these steps, right? And then it gives us all the steps, but there should be only one step, which is basically take the goat across and stop, right? So it suffers from misguided attention in this case. Now, that being said, this is probably one of the most impressive models that I have seen when it comes to web design and graphic rendering. And this is the first time, in my opinion, you can create web apps that don't look like they were generated by an AI. And it's really crossing a threshold where they are becoming very useful for design related tasks. Okay, so we're going to do one more test, and that is going to test the model hallucination. So in here, I'm going to enable grounding with Google search. I'm going to say I'm a tech journalist with a tight deadline. I just saw a headline that Google had held a surprise event. This is the current date that Gemini 3 was announced. There has been a lot of leaks so far. And here are some of the rumored capabilities. Now let's see if it can do Google search and figure out what is true and what is false. Okay, so here's the response. It says, this is breaking situation. While there wasn't a traditional televised keynote this morning, Google CEO Sundar Pichai dropped a cryptic thinking emoji confirmation following a massive shadow release of Gemini 3 that hit developers and enterprise users overnight. I think it's referring to this tweet where Sundar Pichai tweeted this after sharing the Polymarket betting predictions on Gemini 3 release this week. So then it says, here's the detailed breakdown of the 3 specific features you asked about, confirmed by the leaks from the new Gemini Pro and Gemini Nano, internally codenamed Banana, models currently surfacing in the Gemini app and AI Studio. So there has been a whole bunch of leaks, and I think it got confused with some of that because now it started providing a lot of details of these presumably leaked features. I don't think there's any information about it actually. At the end, let's look at some of the benchmarks and my final thoughts. So this is a pretty impressive model. It's the first model that is able to cross 1500 on LM Arena leaderboard. So it's pretty well received by the community. Then it demonstrates PhD level reasoning on top of the humanities last exam. It's reaching 37.5%. So here is the current leaderboard. GPT-5 Pro is at 31.64%. So this is pretty substantial lead. And then on GPQA, which is a grade level exam, it achieves almost 92%. It has really strong multimodal capabilities. On MMLU Pro, it achieves 81%. On the Video MMMU, it achieves 87.6%. When it comes to benchmarks, take it with a grain of salt. These are probably already well saturated. However, the vibes of this model are really good. There's also a Gemini 3 Deep Think version, which also is able to achieve breakthrough performance. So for example, on humanities last exam, without any tool use, it's going to be state of the art. Again, on GPQA, it's a very similar story. On ARC AGI 1, this is a model that achieves 45.1% with code execution. There are also some benchmark results on the vending benchmark too. And with this, Gemini 3 Pro is state of the art again. So what exactly does this mean? I think we are at a stage where the models are already strong enough. It's going to be very hard to differentiate between different models at this point. The main thing that you want to think about is what to build on top of these models. So give it a try. I think you're going to like this model. The vibes are good. Anyways, I hope you found this video useful. Thanks for watching, and as always, see you in the next one.